Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into some, shall we say, interesting financial advice today. You guys sent in this book, You Will Never Be Poor Again, and, well, it's a wild ride, let me tell you.
It definitely doesn't hold back.
Not at all. Like right out the gate, it claims that schools are basically hiding the secrets to wealth, how to think like they're rich and all that. Is that a common idea you hear, or is this author just being extra?
Well, there's definitely a feeling out there that some financial knowledge is like hidden or kept secret. Whether it's intentional or not is another debate, but the reality is there are huge gaps in financial literacy across the board.
Yeah, it makes you wish there was a required class in high school called How to Actually Manage Your Money, right? And speaking of things they don't teach you in school, this book goes on to say that the old work hard, save money advice, it's basically useless now. Their argument is that because of fiat currency, the fact that money isn't tied to gold anymore and can be like printed more freely, well, they say just working and saving isn't enough.
So for our listeners who might not be familiar, fiat currency basically means the government has more control over how much money exists, which of course impacts things like inflation, which this book is very concerned about.
Okay, so it's more about being aware of the system, the rules of the game as it stands now, than just like blindly working and hoping for the best.
Exactly. Things are definitely more complex than just earning and saving these days. And this actually leads into one of the core concepts in the book, assets versus liabilities. But they see it through the lens of cash flow.
Interesting. So it's not just about owning stuff, but how that stuff is impacting your money, right?
Exactly. They say an asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out. And it doesn't matter who owns it. It's about that cash flow.
Okay, so give us an example. How does that work in the real world?
Well, let's say you own a big, beautiful house. Sounds like an asset on paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're paying a big mortgage every month, property taxes, repairs, that's a lot of cash flowing out.
Right, it can add up fast.
And that's what they're getting at. The book uses the example of owning rental properties instead. Now, it's not passive income entirely, there's work involved, but those properties, if managed well, generate income, cash flowing in. That's the key difference they're trying to highlight.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a different way of looking at things. Now, speaking of different income streams, this book also breaks down income into like 3 main types. Can you walk us through those?
Absolutely. So they talk about earned income, which is what most people are familiar with, your job, your salary, anything where you're directly trading your time for money.
Yep, that's the daily grind for most of us.
Right. Then there's portfolio income. That's money you earn from investments like stocks or bonds, things that ideally grow over time without you having to actively work for every dollar.
Makes sense. And the third type, this is where it gets interesting, right?
Right. The third type is passive income. And this book is like obsessed with passive income.
They really paint it as the key to it all, don't they?
Totally. They describe it as money you're earning consistently, kind of in the background, without having to actively trade your time for it.
Okay, so like what are some examples of passive income according to this book?
Well, they talk a lot about rental properties. Remember we were saying how those can be assets that generate cash flow?
Right.
So that's one example. But they also mention things like royalties. Like if you write a book or a song and it keeps earning money even while you're off doing other things.
Oh, I see. So it's about creating something once and then having it continue to generate income over time.
Exactly. Or building a business that can eventually run itself without you having to be there for every single transaction.
Okay, that makes sense. Although I imagine it takes quite a bit of work up front to get to that point, right?
Oh, for sure. This book isn't saying it's easy. But their point is that most people get stuck in that cycle of earned income, trading time for money, and never really explore the potential of the other two.
Interesting. So their philosophy is to try and diversify your income streams as much as possible.
Exactly. Don't put all your eggs in one basket kind of thing.
I can get behind that. Now, I gotta say, there's one part in this book that rubbed me the wrong way. Like, they brag about getting millions of dollars in loans right after the 2008 crash while everyone else was struggling. It felt kind of icky,
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's not the most sensitive example.
So is that what they're advocating for, just going out and taking out huge loans?
No, I don't think you're saying everyone should go out and rack up debt. It's more about understanding how credit works and how it can be a powerful tool if you know how to use it.
So it's more about being informed and aware of the tools available, even if they seem intimidating at first.
Exactly. Like, this book isn't necessarily giving financial advice, but it is highlighting how different people navigate the same system.
I can see that. It's like understanding the rules of the game, even if you don't love the game itself.
Exactly. And, speaking of navigating the system, this author is huge GE on mindset.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. They talk a lot about shifting your perspective, like replacing the phrase, "I can't afford it," with "How can I afford it?"
Right. They really emphasize that.
And, on the surface, it might sound a little simplistic, but is there something to be said for changing your language, even if it feels a bit weird at first?
Yeah, maybe. Like, is there really power in just switching up your words? I'm curious to hear your take on that.
I think so, because when you tell yourself, "I can't," you're basically shutting down possibilities before you even explore them. You're coming from a place of limitation.
Right. It's like putting up a wall before you even see what's on the other side.
Exactly. But when you ask, "How can I?" you're forcing your brain to get more creative, to look for solutions, to be open to different possibilities. It's about shifting from a closed mindset to a more open one.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not about like magically manifesting wealth by saying it, but it is about changing your approach and your attitude towards money.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Right. It's all about mindset.
Yeah.
And while this book might be a little extreme in its approach, I do think that's a valuable takeaway for anyone, regardless of your financial situation.
Totally. Feeling empowered, not defeated when it comes to money. Because let's be real, finances can be stressful. This book, as out there as it can be, it does make you want to be more proactive. What can we actually do to feel more in control of our financial lives?
Well, knowledge is a huge part of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, this source, it might be extreme, but it does highlight how important financial literacy is.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the bigger picture, not just the basics.
So it's not just about budgeting and saving. It's about understanding the entire system, how it all works together.
Yeah.
It's like leveling up your financial game, going from like button mashing to actually learning the strategy behind it all.
Exactly. It's about becoming financially fluent. So as we wrap up our deep dive into this unconventional look at money, what are the big takeaways here? We covered a lot of ground.
We definitely went down some rabbit holes with this book.
For sure. But even if you don't agree with everything this author says, I think it's valuable to be exposed to different perspectives.
Yeah, it gets you thinking, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that financial literacy is like an ongoing journey. It's not something you just learn once and you're good to go.
It's like anything else, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know, which I guess is its own kind of motivation to keep learning.
Absolutely. It's about taking control of your financial well-being, not just blindly following what you've always been told.
Right, because what worked for your parents, or even for us a few years ago, might not be the best strategy anymore.
Exactly. So as we wrap things up here, I think a good question for everyone listening is, what's one thing you're curious about when it comes to your finances?
Ooh, I like that.
What's one area you want to explore further? Maybe it's diving deeper into those different types of income we talked about. Or maybe it's something totally different.
Yeah, maybe it's finally figuring out how to create a budget that actually works for you. Or understanding how to invest your money in a way that aligns with your values.
Exactly. Whatever it is, take that curiosity and turn it into action. Even a small step can make a big difference in the long run.
Love it. Knowledge is power, and that's especially true when it comes to your finances.
Couldn't agree more.
So to all our listeners out there, what's that one action step you're going to take? Keep that question in mind, and until next time, happy diving.